This is my friend Mary. Not only is she my friend, but she was a partner with me through most of my law enforcement career. The story I'm going to tell you, some may think, well, that's just coincidence. Perhaps it was. Perhaps it was not. I'll let you be the judge of that. We've been through a lot together. We've seen a lot. And she'll always be my friend. I'm not Catholic. I never have been Catholic, but it doesn't matter. She's still a good friend of mine. Welcome to another video from Embrace the Journey. My name's T. Walton. If you don't know that by now, here I am, T. Walton. This video is going to be about a little different than what I normally do. It's going to be about Mary and how I got to meet Mary. For those of you that know me, you know that I spent the majority of my career in law enforcement. For those of you who don't, and you've seen other videos, you've probably seen on the wall some stars, sheriff stars. Might have seen some pictures of law enforcement officers, old ones, young ones. Well, the reason that's all there is because I spent nearly 30 years in the law enforcement career. And the reason I really got into that is because of this guy here, Joseph Ortacek. That's my grandfather. He was a beat cop, walked the city streets in New York City. And I would hear the stories from him. I would hear the stories from my mother about his adventures in law enforcement. His career ended when he responded to a robbery, an armed robbery. And when he got there, the robber shot him and he shot the robber. They both survived, and they both woke up in the same hospital room. That was an interesting story in itself. In 1983, I joined the police reserves. I was a young, skinny cop, a man in blue, going to go out there and make a difference in the world. I don't know if I made any difference at all, other than made a difference in me. That's for sure. In 1988, I became a full-time officer with the police department. And so it all began. In 1994, I became a detective on the department. The very first day of becoming a detective, I was already working a homicide. Before that first year was up, I'd end up working 3 homicides. And this is just in a small town in Kansas, or a small city. I worked the gamut of crimes: homicides, felony thefts, embezzlements, rapes. But I was assigned mostly to child abuse cases. And that would have been sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, abandonment. And I would interview the children, and then I would interview the suspects. Back in those days, those interviews were just done horribly wrong. I would do some of those interviews in my patrol car, some of those interviews in a basement where upstairs the perpetrator was, sometimes in the police department, which those aren't good places for kids. So I realized there had to be a better way. And with the help of an SRS worker in Newton, we developed a Child Advocacy Center. And that center was so good, 2 other counties joined us. Whenever they had cases of sexual molestation, they would send them to our center. It was called Heart to Heart, Child Advocacy Center. Since then, most of these kind of cases where kids have been sexually molested are worked through child advocacy centers. If they're not, they need to be. And I can't give credit enough for all the people that work those cases, all those people that help those children, and all the innovations that have happened since 1994 when I became a detective. I was also in charge of logging in evidence, making sure chain of custody forms were completed correctly. On one evening shift, police officers recovered a number of lawn ornaments that had been taken from various homes and placed on the front lawn of a law-abiding citizen. One of the lawn ornaments was a statue of the Virgin Mary. I moved Mary into my office and was going to get her into the evidence room the next day. During the day, I took on a case involving a number of children who said their grandfather babysat for them. He would put them in the bathtub and touch them in ways they didn't like. At the end of the day, I brought the grandfather into my office to talk with him. He was very friendly, a nice man who denied any of the allegations being made by the children. But what I noticed, though, he kept looking over at the statue of Mary that was sitting in my office. And it dawned on me. And what I said to him was, you can lie to me and you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to her. And I watched as tears welled up in his eyes as he confessed to what he had done to the children when he placed them in the bathtub. He would not be the last to make a confession to me while Mary was in my office. Mary never made it to the evidence room. She remained in my office and every office I moved to while working with the police department. When I was elected sheriff of Harvey County, that's in Kansas, Mary moved with me to the sheriff's office. She continued to be my partner, continued to be my friend. As I had mentioned before, I'm not Catholic. I was a lawman. But Mary remained a partner for me for nearly 20 years. Each morning going to work, she would greet me, and I would greet her. I was planning on retiring at the end of the 2016 year. My last bout of being sheriff would be in January 2017. So we were preparing to move because we were going to move to Washington State where my son and my daughter-in-law and my grandchildren were. We wanted to be closer to them. We had packed up, we had used those pods where you can load them up yourself and they send them out ahead of time. Well, I had also taken Mary. I took Mary from my office. I put her in my garage and she was going to move out with me to Washington. Problem we were having is we had already bought a house in Washington, but we hadn't sold our house in Newton, and the time was getting close. Something had to give. Well, I had to go to a meeting one night, and before going to the meeting, I went in the garage. I said, Mary, I could use your help. Please help me out here. I got to be able to sell this house. Could you help me? And I touched her, and off I went to the meeting. I came back, and like every other time when I would come back to the house, I'd ask Karen, my wife, any bids on the house? And usually the answer was no. Came back, I said, any bids on the house? Figuring there was going to be the same old answer, no. And she said, yes, we have a bid. And the house sold. Coincidence? Perhaps. You know, you be the judge of that. And so there it is. That's my story about Mary. She's still here with us. I still go out and say hello. I think she's wonderful. You know, maybe you too have had an experience like this, and you understand what I'm talking about. It's a wonderful, magical experience. It's amazing. Again, is it a coincidence? Maybe. But who knows? Who really knows? Hey, thanks for listening to this story. I know it's different than most of the YouTubes that I put on, but I just happened to be outside again, and there was Mary, and I thought about her. And I thought, you know, people should hear this story. It gives them hope. She was a great hope for me, and still is. So be safe out there, folks. Enjoy your lives, and I'll see you on the next Thursday.